Alright, so we're going to be looking at surds. There's a few rules that we'll look through before we get into any of the questions. They're not overly complicated. They're just generic maths rules, so I wouldn't worry about or stress about needing to revise these too hard. But maybe you do if you're not too sure about them. But when it's multiplied together, you can just write it under the same bracket, under the same square root, just like that. So if you had, for example, square root of 2 times square root of 3, that would equal square root of 2 times 3, which is the square root of 6. Same when you're dividing them, you can write the whole thing under the same bracket, so same square root, which is super helpful because, you know, sometimes you'd have something like that. You can put it all under the same bracket. I'm not too sure why I'm saying bracket all the time. Must be a long day. Under the same square root, and that means you can just rewrite that as 4, and square root of 4 is 2. In this case, if you've watched the brackets video before, you know that it's best to multiply this out and avoid making any silly mistakes by rushing anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to write it out longhand, multiply each thing by each thing. A times A equals A squared plus A root B plus A root B plus root B squared. And it's squared just because it's root B times root B. It's the same thing. And then we can neaten that up by saying A squared plus 2A root B plus B. Square and square root, they both cancel out. This, when you want to rationalize the denominator, for whatever reason, sometimes it's needed to simplify things, and it's impossible if it looks like this. You can multiply it by the denominator and putting it on top and bottom, and the reason you can do that is because this equals 1. If you imagine you put 25 in for B, square root of 25 is 5, square root of 25 is 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1. So this still makes perfect sense and is fine. And then what you want to do is just crush them together, or that's how I imagine it. Because they're multiplied, you can just write them all across the same line, like so. And that simplifies further down to A root B over B. And you can see how this is more useful because you can take the A away from this particular sum. Here, when you're adding two surds, you can't do anything about it. You can't put them under the same square root. So try and not make that mistake. There's a big difference between these two. Alright, now on to a question. So square root of 300 plus square root of 48 minus 2 square root of 75, and they want it in the form A root 3. And all this means is the final answer, they want it as some number multiplied by root 3. 5 root 3, 7 root 3. We'll find out what it is. So you want to get each of these terms with a root 3 and some kind of number in front of it. And we'll take each number on its own and figure it out. So root 300, we know that we can rewrite that by breaking it apart. We can break it up into 103, and we want that 3, so that's good. And the 100 is a squared number, so we just take it out as a 10, and that's because 10 times 10 is 100, and 100 squared is 10. For the next number, sometimes it's easier just to write 3 in straight away because you know that that's what you're looking for. So you know it's going to be 3 times something equals 48. 3 times 16. 16 is another square number, which is 4 root 3. And the last one, 2 root 75 equals, leave the 2 out. We know we want 3, so bang that in, times 25. And when you got a question like this, and you're getting all these squared numbers, you know you're on the right tracks. If you start getting crazy numbers that require crazy maths, you probably have made a mistake somewhere before. So 2 times 5 root 3. So when you take this, turns into 5 on the outside, but you have to multiply it by the 2. So that equals 10 root 3. We then put these back in place, remembering the original signs that they had. So we want plus 4, 3, and then minus 10, 3 equals 10 plus 4 is 14, minus 10 is 4. So 4 root 3. Sometimes it's best to just say, a equals 4. Sometimes there's a mark in there for being super clear, but that's your answer. Alright, so the next question asks, if the length is 4x and the width is x, and the area equals 32, what is x? So if we know length times width equals area, we can rewrite this as 4x times x equals 32. 4x squared equals 32. Divide both sides by 4. X squared equals 8. Square root both of these. X equals plus or minus the square root of 8. And the reason it's plus or minus is if, for example, the number was 3, come on, so say it was x squared equals 3. Sorry, say it was x squared equals 9. The answer could be both 3 and minus 9, because 3 squared equals 9 and minus 3 squared equals 9. But obviously in this case, you know that a length can't be a negative number, so we can ignore that. And then if you wanted to simplify this down further, you know that you could rewrite that as 4 times 2, or you could bring that 4 out, and that'll be your final answer. Next, they want you to rewrite this equation in the form a plus b root 5. So what you want to do is multiply this whole thing by the denominator, but you want to make sure that you change the sign to a negative. And the reason that you want to make it a negative is because it will cancel down, whereas if it's positive you end up with an even crazier number. So you can keep these in brackets if that helps. Multiply it across, so that means 3 times 2 equals 6. 3 times root 5 minus 3 root 5 over 2 and 2, 4, 2 minus root 5 minus 2 root 5, root 5 and 2 plus 2 root 5. So you can see that if that wasn't a negative, that these two wouldn't cancel out quite how they have. And then you've just got the root 5 times the root 5, which is basically minus root 5 squared. So what we can do is we can just cross out these straight away. We simplify it down a bit. 6 minus 3 root 5 over this minus this root 5 squared is just 5, so 4 minus 5, and we have, it's almost, you can see it's almost in that form. Ooh, got to keep moving this paper around. 6 minus 3 root 5 over 4 minus 5 is minus 1. So all we have to do now is something divided by minus 1 just makes it negative. So this is the same as minus 6 plus 3 root 5. And that minus sign had an effect on everything in there. So the 6 went negative and the negative went positive because two negatives make a positive. Hope that made sense, guys. I want to say thanks to Ricard Tapia for being the first subscriber. What a legend. Hopefully I'll have 10 subscribers by the end of the month. Let's make that a goal. What is the date? It's coming up to the end of July. So sometime end of August 2021 we'll have 10 subscribers. Let's make it happen.